Lombardi's look back. That tape was fun to watch. 49ers 33, Dolphins 17. Most impressive 49ers performance of the season, most resounding win of the season. That obviously is going to be dependent on the opponent. And the opponent yesterday really wanted to beat the 49ers. I mean, you could see when you watch the TV copy of this game, and I know that most of you probably were watching this game on television. Even those of you at the stadium have maybe already watched the replay, but you could see just how pissed off Mike McDaniel was. I mean, he was out of his mind. He thought that that one 4th and 2 that was clearly not a catch to Gesicki was a catch that hit the ground. I mean, Mike McDaniel was just having a fit on the sideline over that play, and then the handshake with Kyle Shanahan was really terse. You could see how much this game meant to the Dolphins. You could see how confident they were going to come in and beat the 49ers. I have to ask, what happened to all the people on my social media that said that the true brains behind the 49ers operation was Mike McDaniel and that he was going to show up at Levi Stadium and take Kyle Shanahan to school? I don't think that really happened in this game, did it? But you could just how upset the Dolphins were that this didn't go their way illustrates how impressive of a win it was for the 49ers, because they ended up blowing them out. I mean, 33-17 is not a close margin in the NFL. And it was thanks to overpowering defense. Remember that Miami was scoring between 30 and 40 points in all of their recent games at Tua Tagovailoa. Well, they were 2 plays away from only scoring 3 points in this game. 2 defensive busts away from not scoring a touchdown. Let that sink in, because I think this 49ers defense still has a lot left in the tank. And I'm going to go through some of what I saw on tape in this game to really illustrate that point. But the 49ers overwhelmed Miami defensively. They sped Tua Tagovailoa up. We had a quarterback in Tua Tagovailoa entering this game that was on top of all the NFL efficiency metrics by a wide margin. Nobody had really sped Tua Tagovailoa up until the 49ers did. So it just shows that this defense is something different. This defense is special. And that's the reason why the 49ers can still keep their heads up and still keep on fighting. Because my final point, which I'm going to put onto the screen right now to open this show, and we're going to get back to this, we'll loop back around, make it full circles. The 49ers remain big time contenders. If you watch the tape, that's the only opinion I think you can have of this football team. It's because it's objective truth. They remain big time contenders. They have the best defense in football, if not the best, the number 2. It's them and Dallas above everybody else in the defensive efficiency metrics. And they have a ton of weapons, skill position wise on offense. The 49ers also have a top 10 special teams unit now. Since week 5, they've been top 10 special teams. So, I mean, this team, Brock Purdy could not have walked into a better situation to succeed early in his career than this 49ers team. And hey, for a first start, I thought that was pretty damn successful yesterday for Brock Purdy. And I'll talk a little bit about that. Those of you who watched last night, I know we had a ton of viewers. You probably have already seen the piece that I put up on The Athletic, but I've got to promote that some more. Put it back up there. There it is. 49ers defense smothered Dolphins after Kyle Shanahan fired up Nick Bosa. I'm sure at this point, most people have heard the story, but at the team meeting on Saturday night, Kyle Shanahan mentioned that the 49ers linebackers outplayed the defensive linemen against New Orleans. And it was true. The offensive line didn't play well against the Saints. Neither did the D-line. I think that it's clear that the altitude training and the altitude exposure of the previous week combined with the short week really affected the 49ers in the trenches. By the way, the 49ers will benefit from that effect this week because Tampa Bay is playing Monday Night Football in just a few hours. Tampa Bay is going to be playing the 49ers on a short week at Levi Stadium after traveling on Sunday. So the 49ers should be happy to be on the positive end of that. But I think that the trench play was really affected against the Saints. So Kyle Shanahan, in a little bit of a joking manner at the team meeting on Saturday night, told the 49ers team that the linebackers outperformed the D-line. And Shanahan thought that the D-line was going to be laughing about this. So he looks over at the defensive linemen, namely Nick Bosa, after he says the linebackers outplayed them against New Orleans. And Nick Bosa wasn't laughing. Nick Bosa was sitting there stone-faced. Nick Bosa didn't like being disrespected by Kyle Shanahan. That's how he perceived it in front of the entire football team. So you fast forward to 24 hours later. That's when I wrote this article, because at the end of this game, after Bosa had his third sack of the contest to lead the NFL with 14 and a half sacks this season, it was the one that stripped the football from Tua Tagovailoa, and Dre Greenlaw returned for a touchdown. After that play, Nick Bosa in a crazy stadium, it's roaring. 49ers defense is elite. Feels like a party at Levi's. Bosa walks up to Shanahan, and Shanahan thought that he was going to get the celebratory hug from Nick Bosa. He didn't get the celebratory hug from Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa looked at him stone-faced and said, "Don't ever talk shit about me again anymore." Literally told his head coach to not talk shit about him again without a smile. And Kyle Shanahan was like, "Oh boy, I see how this is. I see how this is. I motivated you with some of that talk yesterday." And Shanahan said, "Okay, I'm going to make sure that I talk some more shit about you, because if I do that, then you're going to have 3-sack games and you're going to take over opponents." And that's exactly what happened with Nick Bosa against the Dolphins yesterday and their backup offensive tackles. He got the 2-1 in a hurry. Tua got rid of the ball quickly. Still, Nick Bosa got him 3 times. And Bosa said, "Yeah, I guess keep on talking shit. Keep lighting that fire. Light that fire." He's okay with Kyle Shanahan pissing him off. And I think that's a sign of a very competitive, well-oiled outfit. That's what the 49ers have right now. It was a great anecdote, and I led and I closed my story up on The Athletic with the shit-talking anecdote. Nick Bosa, Kyle Shanahan, just great look into the personality of this 49ers team. It was cool that they shared that. So go ahead and check that out. That's the piece that I wrote yesterday. I'm going to go ahead and put this in the comment section. This was written after the 49ers won. Here you go. And we have one question here. Michael Norris, you said Jimmy's last plays were 2 of 4 with 4 drops. Not 4. Oh, somebody else said that. I said there were 2 drops. Let's start with that, because we need to talk about Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo was playing damn well right before his injury, not just in the several weeks before his injury, but on that first drive before he got hurt on the final play of it. Garoppolo was 2 of 4 with 2 drops. One of the drops was George Kittle. One of the drops is Brandon Ayuk in reverse order. Ayuk's was first, Kittle's was second. But Garoppolo rolled out. He hit Brandon Ayuk while he was moving on third down. It was a play that was headed over to the sideline, hits him in stride, big explosive play. Then Garoppolo finds Christian McCaffrey deep, hits him in stride, another explosive play. Garoppolo without the drops by Kittle and Ayuk on that first drive would have been 4 of 4. And without the drops, he probably doesn't get hurt, right? That's unfortunate, because they faced the third down. I thought that it was a 49ers offensive failure on the injury third down. They broke the huddle late, 8 or 9 seconds at most, and they weren't ready for a Dolphins blitz. There was a free rusher coming in, just a discombobulated play. There's a reason that you have timeouts, especially in the first half. You don't need them for game-saving purposes at the end of the contest. In the first half, you can't carry those timeouts over into the second half. If there is a miscommunication, especially early in the game, you have to use it. Kyle Shanahan should not have been afraid to use his timeout on the sideline. He didn't use it, and the free rusher came in, and Jimmy Garoppolo ended up getting hurt. Now, I'm not directly blaming the lack of a timeout call on the injury, but it is unfortunate that the 49ers couldn't get into a more settled play when Jimmy Garoppolo was hurt. And it ends up being a crushing blow for this football team, because Garoppolo was playing well in this game. He might have been on track to have his best game. We'll never know, because I thought that the matchup against the Dolphins was really good for Jimmy Garoppolo. He'd been beating blitzes very effectively this year. The Dolphins were bad against the short pass game. We saw Garoppolo nail them with a longer pass game to start this one. So everything seemed to potentially be firing for the 49ers. But we'll never know how it would have turned out. We do know how weeks 2 through 12 turned out with Jimmy Garoppolo at the helm, though. And they ended up being really, really impressive. Let's put this up on the screen. These are team tiers, weeks 2 through 12. So this is after the Trey Lance monsoon game. against the Chicago Bears and up through, I didn't include this past week because Brock Purdy played most of it. So the Jimmy Garoppolo stretch of this 2022 season officially ends with the 49ers as a tier 1 team, a balanced offense and defense, right? They performed really well, and they're right here. Their logo's on top of the Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles. So the question moving forward is the 49ers, I think they can move this up offensively. It already did move up defensively, I mean. It already did move in that direction, in the y-axis direction, because defense is the y-axis yesterday with that excellent performance against the Dolphins. And there's obviously going to be some regression offensively on the x-axis, so they're going to move to the left under Brock Purdy. The question is, how afloat can Brock Purdy keep an offense that has a ton of weapons while the defense presumably gets a little bit better? And it's all complementary, right? So if the offense delivers better, the defense is going to be more rested, and they're going to have a chance to deliver better. So under Jimmy Garoppolo, the 49ers were a tier 1 football team, a bona fide Super Bowl contender. And now it's going to be up to Brock Purdy to maintain that dynamic, keep the 49ers offense as efficient as possible. And on that note, there was a major inflection point in this football game. And that inflection point came right here. You guys probably recognize this. It's a still shot from the TV broadcast. This is 3rd and 2. The 49ers had just taken the lead. It was 10-7. And they had a chance to pile on here. They might have been able to put Miami away sooner. 3rd and 2, though, was a long 2. So this was not a typical running situation. Look at Miami's defense. That's all 11 men in the box. That is a goal line defense at the 50-yard line. You know what we call that? We call that disrespectful. When you stack 11 men into the box and it's not the goal line, when it's at the 50, you are daring the other team to throw the football, to run a play fake, to slip behind the defense. It would not have been hard for the 49ers to slip behind this Miami defense, and it wouldn't have been hard for Purdy to make a toss over the top, especially based on the fact that we saw 37 throws from him in this game. It should not have been hard. It would not have been hard to burn this Miami defense. Instead, Brock Purdy handed this ball off to Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey very predictably was sacked behind the line of scrimmage. Christian McCaffrey wasn't sacked. It was a tackle for loss. He's not a quarterback, but Christian Wilkins made the stop, Miami defensive lineman, and he did the Bosa shrug. He mocked the 49ers celebration on the play, and maybe that really fueled Nick Bosa in this game. Probably wasn't a good idea on Christian Wilkins' part. But anyway, to me, this was the inflection point of the Shanahan-Brock Purdy trust dynamic. Because Kyle Shanahan saw what we all saw. He saw the 49ers running against the brick wall. He saw himself afraid to trust his quarterback. And I think the ultimate truth is if you can't throw against the front like this, you shouldn't be in the NFL. I believe that Brock Purdy can throw, and he proved it over the course of this game. And then Shanahan adjusted. After this, Shanahan started throwing the football. 37 throws for Brock Purdy is a remarkable number for his first career NFL start. Remember that no Mr. Irrelevant has ever thrown a forward pass outside of Brock Purdy. So being that last pick in the draft has not been conducive to QB success in the league. And Purdy showed up and delivered a relatively efficient game considering the circumstances. He was no Jimmy Garoppolo, but it was no bomb either. It was no disaster for the 49ers. There was a lot of good stuff to talk about from Brock Purdy. Topping the list, I think, was the cover 0 throw to George Kittle. That happened later in the second quarter. The drive that I just showed you was late in the first quarter. Toward the end of the second, the 49ers had a chance right before going into the locker room to build a lead. And they were going to get the ball to start the second half first. And Kyle Shanahan, Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, I think Jawan Jennings had a big catch on that drive. Everybody was in their bag on that drive. It was true 49ers offensive cohesiveness. A field goal would have been nice, but they got the touchdown on the angle route to Christian McCaffrey out of the backfield. It was a hell of a drive in which the 49ers found their offensive rhythm with their third-string quarterback. But it came after the inflection point that I just showed you But when you look at that drive, and Kittle had that catch to really start to spark that drive off of the cover zero, you look at the dynamics of that 49ers drive, and you have to believe that they have at least the potential to take their offense to a level with Brock Purdy that can balance out the 49ers defense in a way that could keep on stacking football wins moving forward. And that's all that you can ask for once you're down to your third string quarterback. But anyway, let's talk about some more plays in this football game as we rewind through it. To me, the biggest 49ers defensive play came early in this football game. It was on Miami's second drive, right? The first drive was a disaster. It was a 75-yard touchdown from Tua Tagovailoa to former 49er Trent Sherfield. The 49ers were slightly misaligned on the back end, and Miami's defensive speed is going to make you pay big time for being slightly misaligned. So second drive comes along, third down play. Tua Tagovailoa loves to attack the middle of the field. He has more completions there than any other quarterback in the NFL this year by a mile. Fred Warner drops deep into coverage, and Tagovailoa tries to go for Trent Sherfield again, about 20 to 25 yards downfield. There are very few linebackers in the NFL. In fact, there may only be one linebacker in the NFL that can make a pass breakup on that speedy of an offense 20 yards downfield over the middle of the field on that quick of a release, because the Dolphins get down the field in a hurry. And that guy is Fred Warner. And he could do it because he's fast, B, he's smart, but C, he's 6'4". And you saw Warner make that high reach to knock that ball away from Trent Sherfield. And, the main theme of this game for Miami offensively is that they didn't play to their strengths. Tua Tagovailoa was uncomfortable, he was inaccurate, and he didn't do what he usually does. So all of that's tied together, and that's because the 49ers forced him out of it. And I thought that Fred Warner pass breakup on third down is what forced Tua Tagovailoa, what dissuaded him out of what had usually been working for him so far this season. So it was about taking away the middle of the field, and Fred Warner's first third down pass breakup was a domino effect kind of play. It triggered a lot of discomfort in the Miami offense. And when you saw Tua missing all those passes, well, big reason that he missed all those passes is because he got sped up, not only by the 49ers pass rush, but by the fact that the 49ers coverage, starting with Fred Warner, took away the part of the field that Tua likes to attack most. So he was a fish out of water, or should I say a dolphin out of water in this game. That was the biggest play, in my opinion. The most impressive play came later, and that was Dre Greenlaw running down Tyreek Hill. But this ties in with the Warner play, because when you have a linebacker that's fast enough to run down Tyreek Hill on a crosser and then have the restraint to not suplex him, that was good from Dre Greenlaw too. 49ers couldn't afford a flag at that point in the fourth quarter. When you have that kind of ability in your linebacker core, the quarterback notices, the quarterback feels that. He's going to feel Eric Armstead pushing the pocket in front of him. He's obviously going to feel Nick Bosa sacking him 3 times and hitting him, I think, 4 or 5 times in this game. But what he sees, the windows that open up and close in front of him, that's going to be dependent on the 49ers coverage, discipline, and speed on the back 7. And if Dre Greenlaw is flying around fast enough to cut off Tyreek Hill's angles on the short routes, and Fred Warner is doing what I talked about in the biggest play, and that's not going to pass away with his length and his intelligence and his speed about 20 to 25 yards downfield. If both of those things are happening, Tua Tagovailoa on the Dolphins offense is going to be effective. What they faced against the 49ers defense, they haven't faced all year long. And this is why the 49ers still have Super Bowl hopes, because this defense is different. And it's different not only because of Bosa and Armstead, it's different because of the best linebacking core in football. There should be no question about the fact that the 49ers have the best linebacking core in football. A lot of people before the season tried to say Tampa Bay. Well, Tampa Bay is going to come in with their guys this week, and I think that it's going to be clear that the 49ers are better. They cover better is the thing. The 49ers coverage abilities at linebacker, the speed, is something that changes the calculus, the mental calculus for opposing quarterbacks. And we saw that Tua Tagovailoa really struggled with that. Now, Tua, against the average defense, he gets away with that elongated release, right? I'm using my left hand here. It's a bit of an elongated release for Tua. And he doesn't get away with that against the 49ers, not only because of the pass rushing implications that has. Take a longer release, you give a couple extra tenths of a second for Nick Bosa or whoever to hit you. But also, if you're dealing with a fast defense, if Dre Greenlaw, Fred Warner, or you name the 49ers defensive back is flying around the back end, longer release means more time for that DB to break on the football. And so many times yesterday, we saw the 49ers successfully break on footballs, successfully break on potential receivers to make some contact that I think dissuaded Miami from going to their normal passing concepts, with the best example being the interception from Jimmy Ward. Jimmy Ward was all over a Tua Tagovailoa outlet pass that Jeff Wilson Jr. wasn't even looking for. And that was because Fred Warner, not Fred Warner on that play, Eric Armstead brought some excellent pressure, even though he's being held coming in on the play. So the 49ers rush and their coverage was working together in cohesion. They made so many impressive plays, but to me, the most impressive one was symbolic of their defensive speed, and that was Dre Greenlaw tracking down Tyreek Hill. Dre told me after the game in the locker room that Tyreek had actually beaten him on a cross earlier in the game, and he was like, oh, shit, like, that guy's fast. That's a different kind of speed. So when it happened again down the stretch, Dre Greenlaw said, no, this is not happening. I'm getting on my horse. And to me, that this was so symbolic. It was a midstream adjustment that was symbolic of what the 49ers are going to have to do as a team now without Jimmy Garoppolo. They're going to have to make an intense midstream adjustment. This defense is going to have to really, really be the locomotive that pulls the train. The defense is going to have to be an elite unit moving forward. No questions asked, to pave the way for the offense, which does have some weapons, but let's be honest, Jimmy Garoppolo is a big loss for this team. The defense is going to have to deliver with a midstream adjustment that's similar to the one that Dre Greenlaw made against Tyreek Hill. It's a very tall task, but so was covering Tyreek Hill as a linebacker, and Dre Greenlaw did it in this game. Let's go back to the offense. Purdy and Jimmy Garoppolo have a lot in common. The people who say that Jimmy Garoppolo is a game manager have it all wrong. The term game manager means the guy's not taking any chances. Jimmy Garoppolo takes a lot of chances. Jimmy Garoppolo goes for tight windows in the short to intermediate game, especially over the middle of the field. And the fact that he's been accurate with those has made him one of the most efficient quarterbacks in football, obviously, when he's been healthy. Availability has been the big issue with Jimmy Garoppolo. Well, I saw Brock Purdy do a lot of the same stuff in this game yesterday. He was going for the tight windows. He trusted his release. And because stylistically Jimmy Garoppolo and Brock Purdy share this in common, the 49ers offense should be able to make a relatively smooth transition schematically from one quarterback to the next. It's not going to be throwing out the whole playbook and moving to a new one. Like the 49ers had to do some of that when they moved from Trey Lance to Jimmy Garoppolo, two stylistically different quarterbacks, right? Lance, elongated release, obviously a runner, like to throw downfield more. Jimmy Garoppolo, more precise with that short to intermediate game, ultra quick release. That was Jimmy Garoppolo's strong suit. The 49ers moved right back to it. They don't have to reinvent the wheel with Brock Purdy and his quarterback now. That being said, Purdy does do some stuff differently than Jimmy Garoppolo. Purdy clearly has a weaker arm than Jimmy Garoppolo. The ball's not getting to the receiver the same amount of zip, but Purdy is faster than Jimmy Garoppolo. Purdy moves around the pocket and out of the pocket with more speed than Jimmy Garoppolo. And I think that we will see Kyle Shanahan adapt to this moving forward with some more bootleg concepts. And, the emergency QB yesterday was Kyle Juszczyk because Jacob Eason wasn't called up in the practice squad. So the 49ers couldn't risk Purdy getting hurt, but you might see some more run concepts from Brock Purdy. I'm not saying you're going to run him into the ground. I'm not saying anything crazy, but you might see his legs utilized a little bit more often than they were in the game yesterday. He's obviously has to develop better NFL pocket presence. The good news is that Purdy played 4 years at Iowa State. He's way more experienced than Trey Lance. This is a 4-year Big 12 starting quarterback that is just getting used to the speed of the NFL level. But that adjustment might come quicker than it would with a guy who doesn't have 4 years of starting experience at the college level. A great example is the sack that he took that people, for some reason, try to blame on Mike McGlinchey just because people aren't very fair toward Mike McGlinchey. But McGlinchey did a fine job blocking Melvin Ingram. He forced him to the outside. Purdy, when he feels that pocket closing, needs to step up in the pocket. And he's just not used to NFL speed fully yet. And I'm sure that that's something that he'll adapt to, because on his college tape, Brock Purdy knew how to manage the pocket just fine. It's different at the NFL level. Sometimes your first experience, you're going to be a little bit of a deer in the headlights. And he was, and he stepped the wrong way. He stepped back and he stepped right into the sack. That wasn't Mike McGlinchey's fault. It was Brock Purdy's fault. But you know what? He made up for those kind of like, what is he doing plays. Well, yeah, he's young. You got to give him a break. This is his first start. He's 22 years old. I mean, this guy, Brock Purdy, was 10 months old when Tom Brady took his first NFL snap. 10 months old, and he plays Tom Brady in his first career start this week. So you just have to be patient about some of these inefficiencies that dogged Brock Purdy's start, because he does have some dog in him, as Nick Bosa said. And that dog in him, we saw it against zero blitzes. The Dolphins try to heat Brock Purdy up. And the biggest heat was the biggest completion of the game, the George Kittle right over the middle. That was an ultra quick release, short range gunslinging. It worked for Brock Purdy. It has worked for Jimmy Garoppolo, and the 49ers can definitely work with those ingredients. Speaking of speeding quarterbacks up, the 49ers sped Tua up. And I know that Nick Bosa had his 3 sacks. I think that Nick Bosa should be the defensive player of the year favorite. Nick Bosa leads the NFL with 14.5 sacks. He leads the NFL with 62 pressures. He leads the NFL with 19 quarterback hits. He leads the NFL in pass rush productivity formula, which comes from PFF, which combines all of those things. He's ahead of Micah Parsons in all those categories, yet for some reason, Micah Parsons is still the betting favorite for Defensive Player of the Year. It sounds to me like Dallas Cowboys bias, but what's Nick Bosa supposed to do? He is literally the number 1 edge rusher in all of these categories. And if we want some historical context, take a look at this. These are 49ers franchise career sacks. Nick Bosa passed Chris Dolman for the number 8 spot on the franchise list with 39 career sacks in his 46 games. Next up to pass is Justin Smith, Cowboy, who had 43.5 sacks and way more games as an interior rusher, 110 games. But look what happens after Justin Smith. It's Aldon Smith at number 6. Nick Bosa, with 5 more sacks, has a chance to catch Aldon Smith, and he's got 4 games to do it. And we remember how awesome Aldon Smith was at the beginning of his career. 44 sacks in 50 games. Bosa's got 39 and 46. There is a very legitimate chance that Nick Bosa reaches Aldon Smith on the 49ers all-time sacks leaderboard in fewer games than Aldon Smith. And that would be absolutely extraordinary, because Aldon Smith was electric at the start of his career. That obviously was a sad story, but don't forget how good Aldon Smith was, and use that to appreciate how good Nick Bosa is right now. He is pass rushing with insane efficiency for the 49ers, and was obviously a huge part of that win yesterday. Now, speaking of the 49ers defensive line, Eric Armstead, only 21 snaps yesterday due to the pitch count that he faced. This 49ers defense still has meat on the bone. There is still another level that this 49ers defense can reach, which is perhaps the best news coming out of this game for the 49ers, because Eric Armstead wasn't out there simultaneously with Nick Bosa all too often. Now, I talked about this yesterday. Probably it was a break for the 49ers. I hate to say this because injuries are never a good thing, and you got to hope that Hassan Ridgeway is all right. But just the way that game flow worked, Ridgeway had to exit with the pectoral injury ahead of the biggest 3rd and 2 of the game. Miami was driving. They're down only 23-17. They're feeling themselves a little bit. McDaniel went for a 4th down inside his own 20-yard line and converted it. I mean, this drive was churning along, and the Dolphins were threatening to take the lead in 49ers territory. Armstead was on the sideline because they were resting him as part of his pitch count. Had only 21 snaps. Bosa had 38. So you can expect about 20 more snaps for Eric Armstead in future games as this pitch count subsides. But because Ridgeway got hurt, Armstead had to come in. The Dolphins didn't move another yard. The interior presence and the interior pressure that Eric Armstead brings to the table is second to none. It is a complete joke that there were people going around saying that the 49ers weren't getting what they should be getting from Eric Armstead, or that he was somehow overrated or overpaid. I mean, he's one of the premier defensive linemen in football, worth every penny, right? You saw it now that he was out there after he was out with injury for several weeks. You saw the impact that Eric Armstead makes. He was the key player on the Jimmy Ward interception, and it was a hell of a play by Jimmy Ward, but that pressure coaxes the pass from Tua. And then he comes in on 3rd and 2, and immediately he is that 6'7" presence in the middle of the line that causes massive issues for the blocking schemes and creates space for the edge rushers. Drake Jackson had a massive tip on 3rd and 2, and then another incompletion. It was the play that Mike McDaniel and Wes Welker and that entire Miami staff was really mad about. I thought it was a clear incompletion. Gesicki didn't hold on to the ball on the sideline, but it happened with Eric Armstead in the game. So the 49ers closers up front, the closing unit, it has to involve Armstead and Bosa. And as Armstead weans off of his pitch count, we're going to see him on the field together with Bosa much more often. And that's where this defense can and will take that next step to our stratospheric level. Because as we know right now, this defense, they're number 2 DVOA now behind only Dallas. If you think that Kansas City game was a fluke, and it looks more and more like it was a fluke, then the 49ers defense is number 1 DVOA by a mile if you take out that week 7 game against Kansas City. So this is really, really impressive stuff from the 49ers, and it happened with only 21 snaps from Eric Armstead. And, I just mentioned it. How about Drake Jackson's tipping abilities? Drake Jackson's got some long arms, but there was hands to the face on that tip on 3rd and 2. They showed it on the replay. Should have been a flag. Wasn't called. Drake Jackson, though, even with the hands in his face mask, kept his eye on Tua as he was rushing, got the arm up, made one of the biggest deflections of the game because it was hairy at that point. Niners were only up by 6. It was 23-17, and Miami was driving. Now, back to the very first play of the game. 49ers were a little bit misaligned, right? And we talk about 49ers defensive adjustments. They had made so many of those successfully over the course of their 4-game second-half shutout streak, but they had made those at halftime. This game called for something quicker, right? Because the Dolphins punched the 49ers first. It was like a cold bucket of water dumped on the 49ers' head. First play, Tagovailoa, Trent Sherfield, 75 yards, untouched, touchdown. Just a slight misalignment on the back end from the 49ers, put them way out of position. Tashawn Gibson has to have a perfect alignment against a team that's that fast because Tashawn Gibson's 32 years old. So he's obviously lost the step, but he's still a good player because he knows how to be aligned correctly most of the time. This game, I don't know if it was a D'Amico Ryans problem, a Gibson problem, a Hufanga problem, a Fred Warner issue with the radio in his helmet, but the 49ers were misaligned on that first play. So they had to make an adjustment immediately. And everybody was getting emotional on Twitter. A lot of people said, oh, so much for that 49ers number 1 defense. There was like prominent national media members taunting the 49ers defense about that one play. So everybody was getting emotional, right? Everybody wanted to have their hot take. Meanwhile, the 49ers sat down on the bench, looked at the drawings and said, you know what? We were just out of position on this one play. We're better than these guys. Let's just fix it. And then we'll win this game by 2 scores. And that's exactly what happened. Did they win this game? Yeah, it was. No, they won this. Yeah, 2 scores, I guess. 16 points, 2 scores, 2 2-point conversions. But Fred Warner had a great quote about that first touchdown that the 49ers gave up. You can't look at things like that emotionally. You just have to look at how you can adjust. And the 49ers did the same thing that they had done at halftime of the previous 4 games, except they did it instead of right before the second half, they did it before their second defensive play because the first defensive play was a disaster. And they did adjust. Fred Warner did deliver that most important play or biggest play, we'll say, that 3rd down pass breakup on the very next drive. And then the 49ers started dictating their flow in this football game. And that was huge. And that's why they remain big-time contenders. One more player that I have to mention, Jordan Mason. made a joke, on the first run. I think it was a 12-yarder from Jordan Mason. I said, oh, Marshawn Lynch with a big gain for the 49ers. Oh, never mind. That's Jordan Mason. But hey, this guy's bigger than Marshawn Lynch. He's a physical back, 223 pounds. He wears the number 24. His college coaches compared him to Marshawn, and he's a change of pace, obviously. But he still hits that hole with some speed. Still has some burst because he played a year in the triple option at Georgia Tech. So Jordan Mason had 8 carries for 51 yards. He was the most used 49ers running back behind McCaffrey. And I would advise the 49ers, since they should be in health preservation mode at this point, I would advise them to use more Jordan Mason if they can, running in between the tackles, running, with some of that big contact, and use Christian McCaffrey, who had 17 carries in this game. To me, that's a little too much for comfort. McCaffrey is such a weapon in the check down game out of the slot as a receiver. I mean, we saw him bolt for that deep gain from Jimmy Garoppolo on Garoppolo's throw before he got hurt. McCaffrey is a sensational weapon in the pass game. I get it. He's a weapon in the run game too, but so is Jordan Mason. And he's 223 pounds. He's better built to handle some of that beating, right? And I think that as Mason develops into a more every down kind of guy, as he develops that trust within the 49ers framework and their coaching staff, he can take a load off of Christian McCaffrey, which I think is a significant deal moving forward. Now, I should mention Deebo Samuel. I walked up to Deebo in the locker room yesterday after the game. He said, man, it didn't look like you were hurt. That was impressive. And he told me he was hurting. But, I mean, he played hard. Deebo looked like a star yesterday. And people that only look at the box score are going to say 6 carries, 6 catches, 58 yards. What's the big deal? That was a huge deal. The most impressive 5-yard loss of all time, right? When he went through 5 defenders to preserve a 49ers field goal attempt. That was huge on a play that Miami had sniffed out. But so many times Samuel would move piles of guys back 4 or 5 yards, get the 49ers closer to critical first downs. I mean, with Brock Purdy in this game, the 49ers on third down were 7 of 17. That's good for Purdy's first start. 7 of 17 on third down. At one point, it was 7 of 15 at the end there. I think it stalled out a little bit, but the Dolphins' number 1 ranked offense was 0 of 7 on third down. So the 49ers really won this game on third down, and they don't win this game on third down if Deebo Samuel doesn't either pick up the first downs for them or get them in position for some of those first down conversions with some monstrous yak performances. I thought that was tremendously impressive for Deebo Samuel, and they're going to need him moving forward. But boy, was this a great 49ers team win. They remain big-time contenders even after the loss of Jimmy Garoppolo. This is not going to be an easy loss to overcome. This was a top 3 efficiency quarterback that the 49ers lost. It is a gut punch for sure. The 49ers felt it. They talked about it. They had to clear it out of their minds. They struggled to clear it out of their minds. It's going to be a drop-off to Brock Purdy inevitably, but history tells us that a balanced team, especially a balanced team that has an elite defense, is absolutely still a Super Bowl contender. There is no question about that. The betting odds still reflect that. The 49ers still have a solid shot at this moving forward, and they're in better position than they were at this time last year as far as the standings go. Remember that the 49ers were a play away from the Super Bowl last year, despite the fact that their quarterback was playing with 2 significant arm injuries and that severely compromised his efficiency in the playoffs. So they have to hope they could get Brock Purdy up to enough speed this year to play with decent efficiency. They don't need anything great because their defense is better than last year's that was a play away from the Super Bowl, right? So the formula is clearly there for the 49ers. They can take the 85 Bears route and be dominant offensively and very good defensively and very good offensively. Maybe they could take the 2000 Ravens route, although that one's probably harder in this day and age. Dominant defense, very mediocre offense. I think the 49ers have more in the tank, even with Brock Purdy offensively. Or they could do something like the 0-1 Patriots, and they're facing Tom Brady this week, so that's fitting. The 0-1 Patriots were number 11 and number 13 on offense and defense. Tom Brady threw for 145 yards as a game manager in the Super Bowl, and they beat the greatest show on turf, Rams. I think that's, there should be optimism with what those Patriots did in 2001 because they were an unspectacular team that still won. The 49ers have spectacular elements. The defense against the Dolphins was spectacular. They got that Chiefs monkey off of their back, right? They shut down a very fast and elite offense in this game. And that shows you that if the 49ers have an elite component, all they have to do is find some balance and bring a decent offense to the table to complement that elite component, and they're still Super Bowl contenders. If you don't believe that Brock Purdy can helm a decent offense, well, then they're not Super Bowl contenders, but I think that he can. And then obviously we're going to talk about the Baker Mayfield waiver situation. I did that in a different video, so go ahead and check that out. That is neither here nor there, though, until the 49ers actually acquire Baker Mayfield, which probably is unlikely at this point, but we'll see what the waiver situation does look like. For now, Josh Johnson is the backup, the longtime NFL journeyman. Anyway, this has been Lombardi's Look Back. Thank you for watching. 49ers 33, Dolphins 17. Just some of my observations for that game. Hope you enjoyed the video. Like and subscribe. Obviously, sub to The Athletic as well. And join me on Twitter. I'm going to be sharing some more thoughts over the course of the day. Everybody take care. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your Monday. It's lunchtime now. Let's go get some good